Anthony Cassioppi won a U23 World Championship over the weekend in impressive fashion with a fall in the finals. Along with him, Jay Aiello of University of Virginia also won a world bronze medal over the weekend. But what's even more impressive is the heavyweight field this year based on that international competition. The heavyweight field is stacked with multiple world-level athletes. And Gable Steveson had actually something to say about this on Twitter, which I'll tell you in a second. These athletes, Gable Steveson winning the Olympic gold medal over the summer. Of course, Cassioppi, who's a top-ranked wrestler, just won this championship over the weekend. Mason Parris, a junior world champ. And then Colton Schultz and Greg Kirkfleet are both cadet world champions with multiple international successes at the heavyweight. It's going to be a crazy field. And Christian Piles of Flow Wrestling was one of the first people to point this out on Twitter. Well, Gable Steveson had something to say about that, and he's back in wrestling social media wrecking havoc. He said, "It's Gable Steveson, then the field. They all fall in line." College wrestling is back. Gable Steveson is back, and there's so much that happened over this past weekend in college wrestling. So what else happened? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name's Josiah, and welcome to Fanco Wrestling, your source for college wrestling news and discussion. And if you're anything like me, then you sat down on the couch this weekend, popped on some college wrestling on the TV, or iPad, your phone, or wherever it was, and you were just super psyched to be watching college wrestling again. That's exactly how I was. Welcome to this week's wrestling headlines. We're going to break down the impressive dual meet wins over the weekend, the national champs and other notable wins, some of the first weekend upsets, and confirmed weight classes that have changed in college wrestling, like Sebastian Rivera. We now know exactly where he's going to be wrestling this season. One of the first big dual meets that happened over the weekend was Campbell at Lehigh. Campbell and Lehigh, as well as Oregon State, wrestled over the weekend in a tri-meet on, I believe that was Friday night. You were able to watch on Facebook Live. That's at least where I was watching. And Campbell actually defeated Lehigh 22-11. Right now, neither of these teams are top 25, but Lehigh, by other outlets, has been ranked as high as 16. So this was a great win for the Fighting Campbells. But what was crazy about the weekend in the tri-meet was actually that Campbell beat Lehigh 22-11. Lehigh beat Oregon State, and then Oregon State beat Campbell. So what a crazy triangle. And I think we're going to see a lot of switch-ups in that kind of bottom 15 to 25 where nothing is quite established yet in the rankings with all of these teams coming back. This was the first ever SoCon school to defeat Lehigh in any sort of competition. Just kind of a cool fact coming out of Campbell. Sacred Heart over American 17-16. Not a crazy upset or anything, but just a notable win. And then Bellarmine defeated SIUE over the weekend 19-18. This actually came down to criteria 18-18. And first year coach Ned Shuck of Bellarmine was able to defeat SIUE. What an impressive win coming off of their season last year when they were just 1-9 in their record, and they were able to win this one by criteria. Northern Colorado over Utah Valley was another great victory over the weekend. 19-15 is what that duel ended up. And then one of my favorite duels, I think perhaps the biggest duel of the entire weekend, was Ohio State in UNC. UNC traveled to Columbus over the weekend when Ohio State won 23-12 in the competition. And what an impressive dual meet that was. It was a fun one. It was on the Big Ten Network Plus. And if you still don't know where to watch college wrestling, yeah, I have a video about it on the channel. I also have it up on website, fancowrestling.com. But let's go through this duel because Carson Karchula kicked off the duel at 165 pounds, and the freshman came out with a major decision. We saw a couple of shifts in Ohio State's lineup from last year to this year, but popping in at 165 was Carson Karchula, who's still so far undefeated in college wrestling. Of course, just one win this year, but we'll see how he keeps continuing that. Clay Lout bumped up to wrestle Rocky Jordan at 184 pounds, but Jordan still pulled off that victory 4-1. Each of those guys are top 20 ranked in their weight classes, with Lot bumping up, of course, to 184. Jordan Decatur, as we kind of went around the bend from that 84 all the way up to like 25-33, like Ohio State was looking good. And some of those heavyweights, like the 97 and heavyweight matches, were, to be honest with you, a bit boring to me, but still, we got back into the lighter weights and the excitement picked back up, and Ohio State would just seem to be just dominating this year. In my rankings, the Fanco Wrestling rankings, I have Ohio State at that number 10 or 11 spot, and UNC was at that number 16. I fully expected Ohio State to show up big time, and they really did. Now, Jordan Decatur and Keyshawn Clark was one of the best matches of the night that came down to a takedown, actually, when Keyshawn Clark was able to defeat Jordan Decatur. Now, Decatur is bumping up from 33 to 41, and what a interesting lineup for Ohio State there with like Echemendia and Dylan D'Amelio, but Jordan Decatur got the starting spot, but Clark still ended up winning. And these are two top 20 guys that I expect to see pull some other upsets throughout the season. Then we got into the two marquee matchups of the night with Sammy Sasso defeating Zach Sherman. Now, the score ended up, I believe it was 4-3, but most of those points was because Sammy Sasso gave up two penalty points. One of them, he got the takedown, and then he ended up getting some illegal cutback call, which impressive that UNC coaches actually saw that. I'm always just impressed that they're able to see those details that happen so darn quickly. And then he also gave up, I believe it was a locked hands call, but Sasso ended up defeating Sherman, who's a top 5 ranked opponent at the weight class, and showing that he is that still that top guy there who deserves to be there. And there were a couple times when Sherman was in on a shot, and I couldn't believe they got into some sort of scrambly position where I couldn't believe that like Sasso was able to avoid that. Maybe I should believe that because Sasso is so good at those positions. But Sasso won that match, but Ohio State, they didn't end up the night with a final win because Austin O'Connor, first match at 157 pounds this year, wrestled 157 pounds against Jason Hubbard. Now, I was not expecting much from Hubbard, to be honest with you. I mean, I was expecting O'Connor to come out and pin him right away. And if you just look at the results and see, okay, O'Connor pinned Hubbard, it's like, oh, well, big deal. I wasn't expecting much. He fought him tooth and nail the first couple of periods. Until, yes, ultimately Austin O'Connor did find a way to stick him, but he fought a tough match against Austin O'Connor, and he's somebody to kind of watch out for, I would say. Now, O'Connor, kind of growing pains, growing up to 157. Hopefully he kind of gets it together more, but like you get caught against those elite guys, like you get in those bad positions, they're going to catch it, they're going to throw it on your back and pin you. And let's look at a couple of other notable wins over the weekend. From a couple of national champions, there were actually two national champions that wrestled over the weekend. Austin O'Connor was the first one who pinned in the dual meet, and then the other one was Shane Griffith, who won the Menlo Open over the weekend. He had a tech, 2 falls, and a decision. The other NCAA champ, who not last year's NCAA champ, but a previous NCAA champ, was Mekhi Lewis, returned at 174 pounds. Now, after last year's NCAA championships, we weren't sure like how he was going to come back. I mean, you just want to see him recover from that injury that he had, right? Well, he won the Southeast Open in a dominant fashion. He had a pin, 2 majors, and a decision. Also in Virginia Tech were Corbin Myers, Hunter Bolin, and Nathan Traxler, who all won the Southeast Open, which seemed to be a little bit smaller this year in competition overall, at least from what I'm remembering in years past, but still a good, healthy weekend of competition. Evan Wick, although not a national champion, an All-American and a contender this year at 165 pounds, bonus his way to the Michigan State Open championship. And there's some interesting things going on at Cal Poly with weight changes that I'll let you know about in just a second. And then the other guy here is Brent Moore, who was returning to college wrestling this year after taking a year off. He thought he was done. He thought he was retired. There's actually an interesting story about it on my website, FancoWrestling.com. But Brent Moore won the Clarion Open this weekend in his return to college wrestling, which was a great way for him to come back to the team. What else happened over the weekend in the upsets? Yes, I know the title of this video is Upsets. Let's talk about some upsets that happened because there were a few. First, at the Southeast Open, the biggest upset of the weekend was Joe Manchio of Columbia defeated Sam Latona in the finals. Sam Latona of Virginia Tech, All-American last year, one of the top seeds at NCAAs last year. He beat him in the finals 10-8. Now, if that's not a way to kick off your season, I don't know what is. Considering Columbia didn't wrestle last year, EIWA didn't wrestle last year, or Ivy Leagues didn't wrestle last year, and now to come back and beat Sam Latona, the Ivy Leagues are back, and they are contending here. Another interesting upset of the weekend was at 165 pounds with Parker Krautman of Drexel. I said, like, the EIWA showing up, beating number 8 Kendall Coleman of Purdue 6-1 in the duel, although Purdue ended up, coming up big time in the duel. And then this was a great pin. I mean, let me just show you this. So over the weekend, too, Binghamton's Anthony Saubacher pinned the top 10 ranked Sammy Alvarez of Rutgers in the duel. Yeah, he was caught in a headlock, and that stuff does happen, but still a great win nonetheless in one fun upset to watch. And of course, Binghamton was super excited and thrilled about that happening. Some other things that happened at the Michigan State Open was, I'll tell you this right now, Oklahoma, look out. Look out for Oklahoma this year, because Anthony Madrigal of Oklahoma beat number 5 in the country, Lucas Bird of Illinois. That's impressive. Madrigal is like a top 20 ranked guy, but beating a top 5 ranked guy right out the bat opening weekend is great for, his projections this season. He also beat, at 133 pounds, Rayvon Foley of Michigan State in the finals 3-1. Now, Foley's bumping up from 25 to 33 now, so him and Ragusin as well, who is another guy that Madrigal beat, is those two are kind of in those growing pains, growing from 25 to 33 now, switching weights, so we'll see how that all stacks out, but Madrigal looked pretty darn good. And like I said, Oklahoma just had a great weekend overall with Jake Woodley, a top 10 ranked wrestler, also winning the Michigan State Open over the weekend. He had wins over Andrew Davison of Northwestern, a top 15 ranked Cam Caffey, as well as a top 10 ranked Pat Brucky of Michigan. And we were, Brucky's coming back in this year to wrestle at 197 pounds. Weren't sure how he was going to fit into the lineup, how he was going to do with Miles Amin dropping back down to 184. Well, now we know, at least be on the lookout for Oklahoma, if nothing else, after this weekend. And one last notable matchup that happened over the weekend, upset, before I get to the confirmed weight changes that we know they're pretty much set in stone now, but Troy Fisher of Northwestern defeated Mason Kaufman of Northern Illinois in the first round in a 3-1 sudden victory match. He beat DJ Shannon of Illinois and Anthony Mantanona of Oklahoma in the finals. He majored him 16-7. So what a weekend for Troy Fisher of Northwestern, and we'll see what else Northwestern's bring to the table. Now let's look at some confirmed weight class changes that we weren't sure were going to happen, but now it's pretty much set in stone. Sebastian Rivera is at 141 pounds. We weren't sure, is he going 25, 33, 41? There was no way he was going 25. I never believed that. But 33, it was a potential. Looks like he is wrestling 141 over the weekend. He won a match by forfeit. We wanted to see him wrestle, but he won by forfeit. And he also beat majored Ryan Anderson of Binghamton. Another note just for Rutgers is we see Greg Bolzak in the lineup for Rutgers. Not he's changed the weights or anything, but just another notable guy that after some wrestle-offs and things, looks like to be the starter at 197. Ragusin, I already mentioned him, but from 25 to 33 is another guy changing weights. He went 4-2 at the Michigan State Open. Rayvon Foley, he was really unexpected here. Wasn't expecting him to switch weights this year, but he's bumping up to 133 pounds. Bernie Truow, that's the Cal Poly guy I mentioned earlier, All-American last year at 174, and with Evan Wick coming into the lineup, weren't sure Evan Wick may bump up to 74. That's what we were rumored. It could have happened, but no, he's at 65. Truow now is bumping up from 74 to 84, so that's that shift in the lineup, and he had a good weekend, placed second at the Michigan State Open with a loss to Britt Wilson in the finals by forfeit, so, who knows how that match would have turned out, but I'm excited to see how he'll do the rest of the season. Jordan Cater of Ohio State also from 33 to 41, already mentioned that. And what were some of the biggest takeaways of the weekend? Well, expect to see even more upsets galore. Expect every week guys to adjust to those new weights, even though it's early growing pains. There's some early open tournaments. The number 15 through number 25 spots, weight classes, but also in the dual rankings, they aren't established yet. They're up for grabs, and then lineups are still being figured out. So make sure you stay tuned to Fanco Wrestling for the latest in everything college wrestling news.